on the most? Like the young.
Both of them do.
They do? How are they?
Both of them. Yeah, especially some in the middle school that love the middle school thing.
1. Jared Fogle. For more than a decade, Jared Fogle was one of the most recognizable faces in America. Not for talent, not for controversy, but for discipline. The overweight guy who lost 200 pounds eating Subway sandwiches and walking. Subway didn't just hire him, they built an entire moral identity around him. Eat better, choose better, be better. That story was a lie. Behind the wholesome, soft-spoken image, Fogle was systematically exploiting minors, paying for sex with underage girls, possessing child sexual abuse material. The crimes were not impulsive. They were deliberate, repeated, and hidden beneath the architecture of a carefully maintained public persona. The unraveling began not with a whistleblower, but with someone already under investigation. Russell Taylor, director of the Jared Foundation. When authorities examined Taylor's materials, the trail led directly to Fogle. One rotten branch exposed the root. In 2015, federal agents raided his home. Subway severed ties the same day. Fogle pleaded guilty in federal court. The man once packaged as a symbol of self-control, admitting to exploiting children while the public applauded him. The judge rejected both the prosecution's and defense's sentencing requests and imposed 188 months, 15 years and 8 months, above federal guidelines, over $1.4 million in restitution, and upon release, lifetime supervised release, no quiet reinvention, no clean slate. His projected release date is March 2029, but that date isn't freedom, it's the beginning of a different kind of confinement. 2. Ariel Robinson.
And the winner of Worst Cooks in America is... Ari!
Oh my God!
In 2020, Ariel Robinson won Food Network's Worst Cooks in America, a show built entirely on the promise of transformation. She was upbeat, emotional, endlessly smiling. The judges celebrated her. The audience cheered. While the cameras were rolling, a 3-year-old girl named Victoria Torrey Smith was in Ariel's care. She and her husband, Jerry Robinson, were licensed foster parents in South Carolina. From the outside, faith, family, responsibility, a Food Network winner, a foster mother, the last person anyone would question. Inside the home, discipline had become something else entirely. Testimony later described rigid rules, food, bathroom use, compliance, all enforced through punishment, hands, belts, paddles, a timer used to control how fast a child ate. On the morning Torrey died, Ariel became enraged because the 3-year-old wasn't eating her pancakes fast enough. She was 3 years old, behaving like a 3-year-old. Inside that house, it triggered fatal violence. When first responders arrived at the Robinson home on January 14, 2021, Ariel blamed the injuries on CPR. Then she blamed a 7-year-old child in the home. Both stories collapsed immediately. Medical examiners determined Torrey died from internal bleeding caused by a severe beating. Jerry Robinson admitted he had heard a prolonged beating and then drove to CVS for children's Tylenol instead of calling 911. Ariel was convicted of homicide by child abuse and sentenced to life in prison. Jerry pleaded guilty and received 20 years. An appeal failed. The sentence stood. The Food Network victory, meant to symbolize growth, now exists as something grotesque. Old clips watched with disbelief. She was given a child for safekeeping. That child never left the house alive. 3. Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit was the professional's professional, not flashy, not theatrical, disciplined, obsessive about conditioning, brutally committed to his craft. Fans respected him, wrestlers trusted him. If a match needed credibility, you put Benoit in it. That reputation was built on a lie. By the mid-2000s, years of concussions, chair shots, and neck injuries had left invisible damage. He had grown withdrawn, rigid, emotionally unreachable. His marriage to Nancy Benoit had been fracturing for years. She had previously sought a restraining order after an alleged domestic assault. The charges were dropped. The pattern never stopped. Between June 22nd and June 24th, 2007, Chris Benoit murdered his family. Not in a single burst of rage. Over approximately 48 hours, Nancy was killed first, strangled. She had defensive wounds. She fought back. After killing his wife, Benoit didn't flee. He stayed in the house, lived alongside her body, and continued routine tasks. Then he turned to his 7-year-old son Daniel, who was sedated and suffocated. Benoit then arranged the scene. 3 Bibles placed deliberately, one beside Nancy, one beside Daniel, one next to himself. He sent text messages to WWE colleagues claiming his family was sick, noting the dogs were secured in the pool area. He managed logistics. When he missed a pay-per-view appearance, virtually unheard of, staff grew alarmed and contacted authorities. By the time police entered the home, Benoit had hanged himself in the gym. His autopsy revealed severe brain degeneration consistent with repeated traumatic injury. Tissue resembling that of someone with advanced neurodegenerative disease. Investigators acknowledged it as a factor. They did not treat it as an excuse. The wrestling industry responded with near-total erasure. The legacy is not complicated by what he accomplished inside the ring. It is defined by what he did outside of it. 4. O.J. Simpson.
It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
O.J. Simpson wasn't just famous, he was claimed, the kind of celebrity a country holds up and calls its own. A record-breaking NFL legend, a charming pitchman, a man who felt familiar, approachable, safe. His private life was something else entirely. His marriage to Nicole Brown Simpson was a documented cycle of fear, control, and violence. Police were called. There were records, injuries, desperate 911 calls. Nicole told people she was afraid. She left. She tried to rebuild. On June 12, 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were murdered outside her Los Angeles home. The investigation moved immediately toward one name. Then came the moment that made the story a national event. June 17, 1994. Instead of surrendering, Simpson fled in a white Ford Bronco on live television. Millions watched in real time as America's most recognizable athlete ran from the law. The criminal trial that followed was unlike anything American courtrooms had experienced. The prosecution built a case around physical evidence and a history of domestic violence. The defense attacked the investigation itself: police misconduct, contaminated evidence, institutional racism, and delivered the most famous courtroom moment of the decade. A glove that appeared not to fit, and a phrase that became a cultural shorthand for reasonable doubt. October 1995. Not guilty. The verdict split the country. In the court of public memory, Simpson never escaped the shadow. A civil jury later found him liable for both deaths and ordered over $33 million in damages. Then in 2007, Vegas. Simpson confronted memorabilia dealers at gunpoint over items he claimed were his. This time, there was no shield thick enough. Convicted on all counts, sentenced to up to 33 years. He served 9, was paroled in 2017, and walked out into a world that had stopped seeing him as a celebrity. On April 10, 2024, O.J. Simpson died of prostate cancer in Las Vegas. His story isn't simply about a fall from grace. It's about how long a manufactured image can absorb impact and what the world sees when it finally cracks. 5. Roman Polanski.
Well, I like young women, let's put it this way. I think most of men do, actually.
Roman Polanski built a career so powerful, it functioned less like a reputation and more like a force field. Awards, standing ovations, industry worship wrapped around him like armor. He wasn't just celebrated as a great director, he was treated as someone the world couldn't afford to lose. That belief is precisely how his double life survived. Polanski's mythology rested on two pillars: cinematic genius and personal tragedy. A Holocaust survivor, a man whose pregnant wife, Sharon Tate, was murdered by the Manson family in 1969. The world processed him as the ultimate wounded artist. That sympathy became a tool of deflection. In 1977, in Los Angeles, Polanski drugged and sexually assaulted a 13-year-old girl, Samantha Gailey, during a photo shoot at Jack Nicholson's home. He took a plea deal, pleading guilty to unlawful intercourse with a minor. That guilty plea is not an allegation. It is a courtroom admission. Before sentencing, Polanski convinced himself the judge would deviate from the expected outcome. So on February 1st, 1978, he fled the United States. He was never sentenced. That is why the warrant never died. And here is what makes the story uniquely infuriating. He didn't flee and disappear. He fled and thrived. He kept directing. He kept winning. In 2003, he won the Academy Award for Best Director for The Pianist, unable to attend because stepping on U.S. soil meant arrest. Inside the theater, the industry gave him a standing ovation anyway. A fugitive, a man who had admitted to the sexual assault of a child, applauded. In 2009, Swiss authorities arrested him at an airport on a U.S. extradition request. In 2010, Switzerland rejected the extradition. In 2015, Poland rejected it too. In 2018, the Academy expelled him from membership, but the Oscar stayed on his shelf. The Polanski story has no clean ending. The guilty plea is public. The flight is documented. The warrant persisted for decades, and for most of those decades, powerful institutions kept honoring him anyway. For a very long time, fame bought him exactly what he wanted: freedom. 5 stories, 5 public images constructed with precision and maintained over years. 5 people welcomed into homes, praised by institutions, and trusted by millions, while living something entirely different behind closed doors. The harm in each case wasn't hidden behind genius or extraordinary concealment. It was hidden behind familiarity, behind the assumption that someone celebrated couldn't also be dangerous. That assumption is always the first thing a predator counts on. If this investigation gave you something to think about, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next.